Alright, so as you can see, I've arranged the tiers as made the series, loved to death, positive opinion, mid or mixed, don't care for 'em, just get expelled already, and love to hate, which I guess you could argue should be somewhere else, but since it's kind of a different category, but the characters there don't really fit into any of these, so it'll make sense once the tier list starts. Also, as stated here, this tier list was made to rank the characters, not the actors. Okay? And finally, I'm going to be focusing mainly on their characterizations from seasons 2 through 5, unless their character was most prominent outside of those seasons. Alright, so first up is Abby. I really like her dynamic with Trev. With her being an optimist and him being a pessimist, either of them can be the straight man to the other depending on the circumstances. However, I do think she's kind of a bit lacking in the depth department. The only time I saw real depth from her is when she broke up with Trev and said there was a lot she wanted to do in life but couldn't do it with him. I kind of wish they would have explored those ambitions. But since she's entertaining, I will say I have a positive opinion of her. Aiden Lowe from I Am a Teacher. He's not what I come to I Am a Teacher for, but I still enjoy seeing Madam Soup being help him. So I'll put him in mid. Mr. Allen obviously loved to hate. This man is terrifying. I remember watching the series as a teen and getting so nervous whenever he would walk onto the screen. He's so sadistic and the perfect representation of an evil CEO who only cares about profit and will step over others to get it. I honestly think I appreciate the satire that he and, by extension, the organization provides more now that I'm older. This is Jinhao's other butler in the first couple seasons. I wouldn't have known that I haven't if I hadn't just watched the whole series, and for that reason, I guess I don't really care for him. Annabelle, best night school character. I loved how she at first seemed like a generic spoiled brat, but really has a heart of gold. I really felt bad for her when she revealed she dropped out of school because she was bullied, and the friendships she finds along the way are so rewarding. That's the characters that I love to see in Titan Academy. I'm putting her in Love to Death. She might have been in Made the series if she hadn't been exclusive to the Night School series, but still, she's great. Auntie Betty, she's funny. I like some of the running gags with her, like her only ever serving potatoes, mashed potatoes, and being nice to Vincent. So, positive opinion. Ben, fantastic character arc. He starts off really like kind of a one note jerk who just seems to hate Debbie. Then we see that he secretly does at least kind of like her, or at least tolerate her. And eventually, when she loses his respect, when he loses her respect, he genuinely changes his ways. And for that reason, that great arc, loved to death. Cameron. So I was in high school when seasons 4 to 6 were coming out, and my favorite thing about it was how it wrote teenagers. Class T1 T5 and some of N4 T1 were so relatable to me without feeling like a how do you do, fellow kids. And that's why I really don't like Cameron. He's the epitome of a teenage stereotype that I think the writers are normally better than, so bottom tier. Sherilyn. Look, we all used to overlook Sherilyn. We just saw her as the loud one. Then her final appearance came, and I realized how great of a character she really was. I'm actually not sure I want her back just because her sacrificing herself was such an emotional moment and a great send off. She's also really funny and charming throughout her time in the series, so I'll put her in love to death. Maybe a little above Ben, because she got a better send off than he did. Cheryl, she's fine. I'll put her in upper mid. Chloe. Chloe can be easy to overlook, but rewatching all of Titan Academy for my retrospective, I found that I liked her. I like her love of sea life and budding friendship with Diana, so I'll put her in positive opinion. Cleverly. He was a little on the one note side until his last few roles, where. But in those last few roles, he does a lot. He creates class rush, starts a relationship with Diana, and it's one of the sweetest relationships in the series, and sacrifices himself. And for that reason, he's going right under Chloe. Crystal, she's alright. I'll put her in upper mid. Chelsea, aka Debbie's mom. Her shtick of constantly being afraid of Debbie having normal interactions with boys and not dressing as nerdy as possible while setting a terrible example in that regard is fine. Although her reveal that she only makes Debbie wear the glasses to make her less attractive is a little too far, I guess. But she doesn't really veer into the love to hate category either. I do at times wonder, though, if she is just envious or wants power over Debbie, or if she is actually regretful of the path she took and doesn't want Debbie to take that path and is just misguided on how to do that. But either way, I'm putting her. No, I don't think she's good as Cheryl. I guess she's more interesting than Cheryl, so I'll put her in mid or mixed. Debbie, how can you not love Debbie? She's so sweet and innocent. She's just an angel. She's so adorable. Plus, she has a good arc of learning to stand up for herself. Plus, the running gag of her interacting with Bells is really funny and it's just a good inside joke. Like, it's a little motif. Like, if you don't understand it, then you don't get it. But if you do, it's just a little bonus. So she's going at the top so far. Top of Love to Death, at least. She's very close to made the series for me, but I just think there's a few characters that I love just a little bit more. Mrs. Taylor is on the exact opposite end of the spectrum. She's a cruel Karen who is emotionally abusive to her daughter. And I think there's a good message in this about not putting unreasonable amounts of pressure on your kids. Plus, she's a major reason why Denise is so interesting, so I'll put her I'll put her below Mr. Allen in Love to Hate cuz he's like genuinely scary. But yeah, I think Mrs. Taylor is a very important character. Again, she's why Denise is so interesting. And speaking of which, Denise is going and made the series for me. Denise could have been one of the most cliched characters in the series. The child prodigy is one of the most common tropes in media. But I don't think there has ever been a better child prodigy character than Denise. They hit a great balance of capturing what we like about that trope and putting a fresh spin on it. They play up her intelligence to such comical degrees, but they keep her human enough to always be sympathetic. Her perfectionism is at first played for laughs, but once we meet her mom and see that it's caused by her emotional abuse, suddenly it's not as funny, but it adds a new layer to her character. Seeing how her classmates either bullied her or used her in the early seasons is also really sad. And I found it rewarding to see her classmates gradually accept her. And I love seeing her relationship with Jianhao because he was likely the first person ever to be interested in her as a person and not just a student. So yeah, definitely made the series. And we go right into the second character in made the series with Diana. Diana at first seems like the stereotypical mean girl, but she has one of the best arcs where she dates cleverly and becomes a genuinely compassionate and selfless person. She's the only N4T1 character that I think is on par with the best of T1T5. Plus, I love how anti Mr. Allen she is. Dr. Burke. I wouldn't think too much of her, except for the fact that she is canonically a wizard, which puts her in upper positive opinion. Fiera, she's just a poor man's Vicky. I'll put her above the butler guy since I remember her, though. Hakim. Not a lot to say about him other than he's funny. Sure, he's kind of just the dumb guy, but he's a funny example of the dumb guy. So, I have a positive opinion of him. Jack, I don't really like him. His only real joke is that he hates his wife, which is kind of repetitive. I don't feel strongly enough to put him in just get expelled already, but he's definitely at the bottom of don't care from. James. works well as an antagonist for I Am a Teacher, and he has a surprisingly strong arc in the Night School series. But once he joins the organization, I don't really like it. He doesn't really have the same presence as Mr. Allen. I'll still put him in love to hate, but at the bottom of the tier. Jasmine. Jasmine is one of the very few characters in T1, T5 that I'm actually not that big of a fan of. She's kind of just the generic mean girl archetype with no real subversion of that like Diana. They try to add depth to her by making her smart secretly, but nothing really comes of that. Plus, there's that one episode where she calls Denise a slut. That might have lowered my opinion of her. She does have a few funny moments, which is why she isn't lower, but I'm not sure. I just wish she was more developed and interesting. Um, I guess she never dragged down the series for me and is at least memorable, so I'll put her in mid, but at the bottom of the tier. Maddie's sister Jaslyn, going above Aiden. She's okay. Actually, no, I'll put her below Aiden, but above Jasmine. Jinhao. Jinhao's another character that has much more to him than at first meets the eye. At first, he's kind of just a slacker. You know, we've seen that time and time again. But then, he kind of slowly realized that he's low key one of the kindest characters in Titan Academy. I love whenever he shows how much he cares for his friends, whether it be being Denise's confidant when she needs it, taking the leadership initiative when they're performing a heist or stuck on an island. Plus, he had a low key great character arc. I love how the one time he passed his exam was because of Denise's help. That's why I love them together. He needed motivation. She needed a friend. And so, between one of the best relationships in media, a great character arc, and a very likable personality, I'm barely putting him in Made the Series. I know that sounds like it should be easily in Made the Series, but that's a really high tier, and yeah. Juhi is another character who isn't really explored but is consistently funny, so I'll put her below Hakim. Now, when I first got into Titan Academy, Julian wasn't the first character to grab my attention. She was actually just a supporting character at best for the longest time. Then, after Sherilyn got expelled, I thought her character would kind of disappear since now her most prominent dynamic was gone. But that's actually when she became a much more major character and became one of the funniest characters. I think, I know I said I wouldn't say very much about the actors, but her actress is amazing with physical comedy to the point where, let me show you my background. Yep. So I'm putting her in Love to Death, below Debbie. Yeah. I can't reasonably put her in Made the Series because, well, it was so great even before she became prominent, but I love Julian. Kai, for a character that was so tied to the protagonist, Kai is barely used. Like, they had a good idea for him, like, seeming like a bully, but really having a soft spot, but they don't really do anything with it. And I don't really care for that. Now, Kevin has always been one of my favorite characters. He may be the funniest character in the series, with his tendencies like getting offended by everything. He gets himself into the silliest situations that lead to some of the best jokes. My favorite being the "It's okay, I'm vaccinated." But I think my appreciation for him only increased as I did my retrospective because I realized how good yet subtle his arc was. Where he kind of becomes power hungry when he feels like he's been disrespected, but eventually gives up that power because he doesn't want to prioritize it over his best buddy, Rennie Xiang. For those reasons, I am putting him above Diana but under Denise. Leanne Lowe. Again, she's not what I watch I Am a Teacher for, but she does have a nice contribution to the plot by offering Su Bing the job at the end. Yeah, right there. And speaking of I Am a Teacher, Madam Su Bing is next. She's a very subversive character. I love how she seems cruel, but when the chips are down, she really does care for her students. Like, she's even willing to lose her job for them. Plus, again, the short film starring her, if you've seen my retrospective, you know I love it. She may only be my second favorite teacher in Titan Academy, but she still definitely taught me something since she's where my senior quote came from. Uh, should I put her above or below Annabelle? I'll put her above Annabelle. Maddie, I have a soft spot for her. I got into Titan Academy right around the time she was introduced. She's incredibly likable, making friends with everyone so quickly. They may have lost a lot of that, but one, they're gaining that back, and two, this is for the characters in the Golden Age, so I'm putting her. Should I put her above or below Sherilyn? I feel like Maddie's more important, but Sherilyn's more entertaining. So, hmm. I might regret this later, but I'll put Maddie above Sherilyn. As for I always kind of cringed the first time she has her "my restaurant" joke, but the more lore they add to that joke, the funnier it becomes. Like, there's a "my restaurant" and a "your restaurant" on the same street. That's funny, but it's still kind of hard to get past the first time. So, yeah. And actually, come to think of it, I'm probably going to put Chelsea a bit lower. Yeah. Michael. He's not as disappointing as Cameron, but he's still too stereotypical, and I think their dynamic was done better in I Am a Teacher with Soup Bing and Vicky. Miss Shirley, my favorite teacher in Titan Academy. They combine the complexity and selflessness of Madame Soup Bing with a great character arc. I talked a lot about her development in my retrospective, but to sum it up, she goes from being honestly a straight up villain to one of the most compassionate and honestly possibly the most selfless character in the series. Like, she sacrifices her happiness for her students. And because of where she started off versus where she became, she's going above Denise. Miss City, she's a pretty neutral character, and as a result is going in mid. Miss Sophia, I liked her well enough. She's pretty funny. Yeah, I'll put her below Abby but above Auntie Betty. Uh, this might be kind of a shock, but I'm actually putting Mr. Dan in love to hate. I'll put him above James even. Not because he's particularly evil, but because he's so incompetent that you get why every single other character hates his guts. He simultaneously tries too hard and is too lazy. I think we all had a teacher at some point that's just one big, how do you do, fellow kids? Having a character who exists for the other characters to hate isn't really a novelty, but he's one of the funniest examples because you get why they hate him and kind of agree, but they still play up the character's reactions to him enough to make it utterly hilarious. Mr. Lakosh, he's really funny. This might seem weird, but his thing with Trev's mom, anytime it's mentioned, it makes me laugh. Um, I'll put him. Should I put him above Chloe or below Chloe? I'll put him above Chloe. He's just more iconic. Mr. Mabuhay. Hey, he's everyone's pare. You gotta have a positive opinion of that. Mr. Muturaja. Mid. He's This might be partially because he's not really in any of the really good seasons. Like, he's kicked out in season 1 and doesn't come back until season 8, and I think that's kind of a detriment to his character, and as a result he doesn't have as many memorable moments as he maybe could. Philip, a funny character who isn't used too often, but it's always a treat when he is. I'll put him. Yeah, he's just funny enough that I just put him above these characters. Mrs. June. She's Trev's mom. Ran away with Mr. Lakosh. That's a funny running gag, but she's also a terrible mother. Possibly a lot worse than Chelsea, but only a little worse as a character. Mrs. Nancy is very funny, but I think she peaked in her first few appearances, where she's like weirdly sensitive, which is something you don't really expect from her character nowadays. So, I'll put her in positive opinion. I'll put her above Hakeem. Now, Nicole is great. I love her apathetic reactions to everything and her rivalry with Julin. That joke has kind of gotten beaten into the ground, but I'll definitely put her above Ben. Maybe not as high as Sherilyn. Patrine and Tiffany, I'm gonna rank together. I'll rank them here. They're okay, but they're kind of the same character. I'll put Tiffany one spot higher. I think they have their funny moments, but aren't dynamic enough to really stand out. Now, Peishi is kind of a double-headed sword. Her personality of being loud and angry can either be can be funny, but she's not always likable. Like, Renee Young and Kevin do bully her a lot, but sometimes she does attack unprovoked, and she's not super relatable, which makes it harder to connect with her as opposed to Kevin and Renee Young. And I also think the slap scene from the PE episode just wasn't that great, like from a writing perspective. So I'll put her. I'll put her above Jasmine. She at least, I feel like she just contributes a bit more, even if I don't. No, I'll put her below Jasmine. Yeah. Mrs. Regna, a good sidekick to Mr. Allen. She's a bit better of a person than him, but not by much. She's still very greedy and evil, so I'll put her in the middle of love to hate for now. Renee Young is my favorite character in Titan Academy. That's because he's the one who resonates with me the most on a personal level. Everything about him, from his beginnings as a simp to him becoming a jerk who pushes people away to realizing just how loved he is something I've been through. And there's hardly any characters that I feel I relate to as much as Renee Young. You could argue that his arc was undone by the PE episode, but I don't really agree. See my retrospective if you want to know why. But Renee Young is one of my favorite characters ever created. On the opposite end of the spectrum is Robert. He's just a bunch of old person jokes. Sally, a, a funny enough character, and a good mother to Miss Shirley. I guess I'll put her in the bottom of positive opinion. This guy, screw him for slacking off and blaming it on Jianhao. Yeah, I'm putting him at the bottom of don't care for him. Sierra wasn't around long enough to really be explored, but she does have some funny moments like biting Mr. Lakosh. And purples the purples kind of sus moment is actually what initially inspired the short film I made. You can't really tell that when you watch it, but yeah, that's actually the initial inspiration. Uh, where to? I'm putting her in positive opinion. Uh, where though? I'll put her above Abby. Sonny, now he's just a traitor, but back in the day he was kind of funny, so I'll give him. I'll put him above Sally. Actually, I'll put him above Auntie Betty too. Sylvia Tan doesn't have too much of a presence, but I do get the impression that she does care for her kids, which is more than I can say about most of the other parents. But I'm still gonna put her in. I'll put her under the under the Mean Girls. Yeah. I miss Tasha. She was so cool. I loved all her conspiracy theories and how she found out about the organization before anyone else. Sometimes her theories were right, sometimes they were wrong, but she was always a great character. Out of all the characters who've mysteriously disappeared over the years, Tasha is the one that I hope returns the most. I think exploring how the organization got rid of her and having her help defeat them as a result of that, would be such an interesting storyline. This might be a bit of heresy, but I'll put her above Maddie. Yeah. Because, hey, Tasha was me as a teenager, always suspecting the school is putting mind control and serum in the school lunch. That was just me as a teenager. So sue me. Terry is another love to hate character. This guy is a menace. From creeping on the girls to abandoning his classmates on an island to straight up committing arson. Terry is so evil that it's hilarious. I actually might put him above Mrs. Taylor. Not above Mr. Allen, though. Teverly, on the other hand, is hateable for all the wrong reasons. I know I said I'd mostly be working with the seasons 2 through 5, but since Teverly was more prominent in seasons 7 through 9, I'm ranking him based on that too, largely. He works fine enough in small doses, which is why he isn't in Just Get Expelled already. But once he becomes a major character, he's just too annoying and even becomes less of a threat. No, honestly. My main reason for hating him isn't even that he's working for the organization, it's that he's annoying and his ego gets under my skin. Timmy can be kind of annoying, but he has some really funny moments, like when he sings about his daddy issues and opens his laptop to something kind of sus. Yeah, I'm actually putting him at the top of mixed just for those moments. And this Tim guy, his backstory is funny, but other than that, he just exists to get kicked out. Um, yeah, I'll put him here. Now, Trev is hilarious. I love his dynamic with Abby, but unlike Abby, Trev is a great character in and of himself. His frequent crying is funny and surprisingly not annoying at all. They make him so that you can feel some sympathy for him while still finding his circumstances so ridiculous that they're funny. I love all his get rich quick schemes, his stonks and doggy coins. He's another character that I miss in later seasons. I'll put him. I'll put him just under Tasha. Tyler, at least he sang the PEMDAS song. I now know parentheses, exponents, multiplication, yada yada because of him. So I guess I have a positive opinion of him just for that. Viknesh, I guess he's funny when they use him, but they don't really use him that often, so I'll put him in upper mid tier. Come to think of it, if I'm gonna put Timmy in mid tier, I might as well put Tyler in mid. Yeah, I think I'm even putting him below Timmy. Actually, I'm probably gonna hate myself for this, but I actually might put Timmy in positive opinion, just because I just think he's more funny than we all tend to give him credit for. Vicky. She's great in I Am a Teacher, and in the main series has some really funny moments. So I'll put her at the bottom of Love to Death. Now, Vincent is the reason why I had to specifically choose seasons 2 through 5, because he's a completely different character after that. Nowadays, he's written more like a Vivzy Pop villain, but I don't want people to just be remembered. I don't want him to just be remembered as that. I also want him to be remembered as a hilarious and relatable character who, well, yes, wasn't the nicest guy, still had a conscience and relatable insecurities. So, I am putting him above Maddie. Yeah. If you've only seen the later episodes, you are probably furious at me, but Vincent was a great character in the old days. He was still a jerk, but he was our jerk. Wallater, I'll put him in. Wait, that's not Wallater. Yeah, I think all three of these characters are going in mid. I think Wallater's upper mid tier because he has a major role to play, or at least somewhat major. Czar, I find him kind of forgettable, but I do remember a few moments from him. Well, I guess I'll put him. I'll put him between the lows, and Zoe is going below Aiden. Actually, one more thing. I'm gonna actually move Teverly to just get expelled already because I just find him really annoying. As you can see, a lot of my favorite characters are in Class T1, T5. I think they're the gold standards of how you should write teenagers, and some of the best characters ever created. The reason I fell in love with Titan Academy in the first place is because as a teenager, I saw myself in each of these characters, and when doing my retrospective, I found that I can even relate to most of them as an adult. Let me know your favorite characters in the comments, and check out my retrospective. It's how I rediscovered my love for the series that inspired this video. Thank you for watching.